Following Love Among the Cannibals and all the turmoil that followed.
When it seems no one's there to turn to, everyone's a stranger.
In 1990, as the band was now reduced to 4 members. The ones you saw in that interview in the last video: Brett Bloomfield, bass guitar, Mickey Thomas on the vocals, Mark Morgan on keyboards, Craig Chiquiso on the guitars. The tour had just wrapped up. Any momentum that they had been derailed by the fight between Baldwin and Thomas. In 1990, they recorded a song called Don't Lose Any Sleep. It's another Diane Warren written song, and it was originally recorded by John Waite. They recorded for this album. Shortly after that recording, Craig Chiquiso the final link to the original JS. And his words said he saw the sun setting and he handed in his walking papers. So Don't Lose Any Sleep was the last Starship song that Chiquiso performed on. He actually performed another one called Keys to the City, which was recorded for this album here. And Keys to the City is every bit as good as any Starship song. So the new ones were Don't Lose Any Sleep, Keys to the City, and then in a last gasp effort to keep Starship alive, Mickey Thomas and Mickey Thomas and Peter Wolf got together, as well as Martin Page on the backing vocals and a guy named Peter Maunu on the guitar, since there was no more Chiquiso, and they recorded the song Good Heart. Good Heart was released as a single, and it went to number 81 on the Billboard Hot 100. So Good Heart is, to this day, the final Starship song to crack the Billboard. So this was released in 1991, and shortly after the release, manager Bill Thompson essentially fired Starship, and RCA dropped them from their label. No other label picked them up. So Starship had come to an end. This is a real shame because I feel like, and I've talked about this with some fellow fans on YouTube, they had one very solid album left in them. If they had taken the songs Don't Lose Any Sleep and Good Heart and Keys to the City. Don't Lose Any Sleep's not a very good song, but Good Heart and Keys to the City are. They could have built an album around these three songs. You know, have Martin Page come in and write something else. Have Mickey write something. He showed he was capable on Love Among the Cannibals. And to retain some of that Love Among the Cannibals sound, release something in 1991 or 92. It just would have been cool to have 4 JS albums with Bal and Slick, and then 4 JS albums with Mickey and Slick, and then 4 Starship albums. And I think they would have been well served doing this, but it was just not to be. Some of this was the changing times. By about 1992, 93, people had pretty much moved on from the 80s pop sound, and they were really making a move from that short-lived hair metal type of sound. They were getting into grunge and things, but still, you know, Starship could have had one more right in that 1991-92 period and done fairly well with it, even if it was on a different label. They had the people intact, despite no Chiquizo. They had Wolf there, they had Martin Page, other people, but it was not to be. So Starship was over, but the Starship name did not stay dormant for long. This is where you begin to see the two bands would make an attempt to reform. So in 1992, Paul Kantner reformed Jefferson Starship. The first lineup included Papa John Creech. You see him there on the left. It was really cool to bring him back. It also included Jack Cassidy, who had been the bassist for Jefferson Airplane. Jack Cassidy was not there very long, only a couple of years. Then he went on to focus more on the band Hot Tuna, which is a live jam session band with he and Jorma Kaukonen, the original lead guitarist of Jefferson Airplane. There's Papa John in the background. Now Marty Balin would join in 1993. This is a clip of him in January of 1994. The more he was in it, the better it was. But he was kind of in and out of the newly formed JS, which for a while went by the name Jefferson Starship, A New Generation, or The Next Generation, which is a very lame title. I'm glad they dropped that. But Marty Balin was mostly out of this band, but he contributed some to the live shows. There's Kantner on the left. Darby Gold in the center was the female singer. So also in 1994, the first member of the Jefferson family to pass away was Papa John Creech. This is just an amazing musician. This is a guy who played with Louis Armstrong and Nat King Cole and Big Joe Turner, and just a career musician. Of course, he was like almost 60 when he joined Jefferson Starship, and when they first formed. And then this is one of his solo albums, also on the Grunt label. And there's his friends right there. Of course, you see some JS names on there. Pete Sears. Picture in the gatefold. Papa John, he's kind of like, I was thinking about this, he's kind of like the Crazy Ralph of the Friday the 13th series. That guy right there. That's Walt Gorney. So Walt Gorney, Crazy Ralph, who in the first two movies in the Friday the 13th series, and then they brought him back in part 7 to do the opening narration, which was a nice little touch. Beloved character in the movie. I always thought like Papa John was kind of similar because he was older, beloved by the fans. And then they brought him back at the end, and he was able to play in the newly formed JS for a few years up to his death. And some people have questioned like why it's kind of an odd fit. Like why was he even in JS? I've always thought he was fine. Like having that violin in there, it was a big part of the sound. I think his best work was on Dragonfly. I'm not too big on the Get Fiddler from where they showcase him on Red Octopus, but definitely an important member of JS and kind of forgotten. One of those guys that, like a lot of musicians of his time, will probably never get the respect he deserves. So, rest in peace, Papa John. Let's take a look at some of the changes in the JS lineup through the years. So they list Marty Ballin, but he was, like I said, he was really just in and out. It was mostly Kantner carrying them. In 1998, they released Windows of Heaven. I've mentioned this before, which was the first JS release since Nuclear Furniture. First studio album, anyway. Okay, so in 2005, a familiar name returned to the fold, and that would be David Freiberg, the acoustic guitar. Now, remember, there was a falling out where Kantner and Freiberg had not spoken for over 20 years. And when he came to rejoin Jefferson Starship in 2005, he had to apologize first to Kantner and admit that he had been wrong about sticking with Starship back in 1984. And they were able to rekindle the friendship and then play together for the next 10 plus years up until Kantner's death. And here's a 2011 interview, which.
And we never sing it the same way.
Freiberg, Kantner,
of our band. So
and there's a legendary moment.
Anomalies and sort of disoccurrences that shouldn't be, but then they resolve eventually, and it's just a beauty that falls over the landscape.
Actually, yeah, the Jeffersons.
All right, so in 2008, another familiar name joined JS. First, there was the release of Jefferson's Tree of Liberty. This is another album that came out. And then you'll see there Freiberg, Kantner, and then Donnie Baldwin came back in. And I don't know if he had to apologize as well for sticking with Starship back in 1984, but there's this theory floating out there that he didn't have to apologize, and that the fact that he rearranged Mickey's face, that was, Kantner was rewarding him by bringing him back in for doing that. I hope that's not true. If that's true, that's a very petty move. But anyway, you had almost half of the players from Nuclear Furniture from 2008 up till 2016 in JS. As for Grace Slick, she stayed true to her word about how she believes that old people on a rock and roll stage are pathetic, and how she announced she'd retired. So after that Jefferson Airplane tour back in 1989, she was pretty much done. There was at least one little appearance, I think it was like right after 9/11, where she came out at a JS show and did like one song or something, but other than that, she's pretty much done no performing whatsoever. Now, one thing I did find out last night was that Pete Sears actually did have a couple of performances, a couple of guest performances with JS, which kind of surprised me. One was in 2009, the other was in 2016. This is the one from 2016. It's a very lousy rendition of the Pete and Jeanette Sears song, Winds of Change. There's David Freiberg, and there's Pete Sears right there on the far right. Wow, that's not too good on the ears. Alright, and of course, in January of 2016, we lost Paul Kantner. However, JS decided they would continue. And so this is what they look like today. Alright, so here they are. This is Chris Smith, the keyboardist, Jude Gold, the lead guitarist. Kathy Richardson is the vocalist. Ugh. And that's David Freiberg. I heard someone say he looks like George Washington now. I mentioned he's 83, still going strong. And then Donnie Baldwin right there on the left. So that is the current JS lineup. They released the 2020 album, Mother of the Sun. So meanwhile, back in the parallel universe, we'll backtrack to 1991 after Starship was dropped from the RCA label. Mickey Thomas, around late 91 or in early 92, he was in his travels, he would hear people, fans and stuff, come up to him and say, "Oh, when's Starship gonna perform again?" And so he attempted to contact every member of the band to see if they were interested. And by that, I assume he means Chiquiso, Bloomfield, Morgan, and not Donnie Baldwin. Maybe this drummer here. That was the one who replaced Donnie Baldwin on the end of the Love Among the Cannibals tour. And none of them were interested. So he got together with these musicians here, early 1992 to 93. So guys, here's some backup singers. This guy here, Bill Slays, was actually with him and Elvin Bishop and performed on Mickey's first solo album. So that was kind of cool. He was there on saxophone and keyboards. So now Brett Bloomfield, sometime in '93, did rejoin. So you had a couple of performers from Love Among the Cannibals, actually, and Bill Slace was still there, who were in Starship. So this is roughly 1996 or so. So they continue to tour under the name Mickey Thomas's Starship, and sometimes Starship featuring Mickey Thomas. There's Daryl Verduzco, mentioned earlier, from the KBC band on the drums. He was there from 1993 to present. And then you can see there's Brett Bloomfield on backing vocals and bass. Speaking of Brett Bloomfield, not a whole lot to say about him other than he did a good job on Love Among the Cannibals. So, thank you, Mr. Bloomfield. And then Mark Morgan, who had been the keyboardist, he only on Love Among the Cannibals. He retreated to, I believe, somewhere in California, and he was more of a guy who just kind of worked on TV, music production, and movie stuff. He wasn't much of a into doing performing and stuff like that, so he never rejoined Mickey's band. Mark Morgan, thank you for your service. And as for Mickey, let me talk about Mickey for a second, because it was in 1997 was the first time that I saw Starship live. I think it was being billed as Starship featuring Mickey Thomas then. And I was familiar with only the three: We Built the City, Sarah, and Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now. I did not know any of the other, like Jane and Stranger and Find Your Way Back, any of those songs. But seeing and hearing him live, I was immediately just hooked by that voice. This is man crush stuff coming in, but also his just the personality, kind of his laid back attitude on the stage. But he kind of converse with the audience, and just like a cool dude to be amigos with. And I was just it was just the greatest voice I'd ever heard in a rock band, and that's what really got me into picking up that greatest hits CD, and eventually learning more about the band and JS before them, who I'd known nothing about. So Mickey, just a class act, just a good dude, incredible singer, amazing pipes. Now I went to a show in about 2004 or so, and this is in Northern Virginia, and the band, things were getting a little bit stale. Things weren't going too well. It was an outdoor show, kind of bring your own seat kind of thing. Now, and one thing I do remember about that show is that there weren't that many people there, and it was easy to get up to the front, and it was a little bit concerning, you know. And there was a person walking around with one of these things. There was an advertisement for AOL. It was they had like a styrofoam thing. They were walking around the place, just sort of advertising for it. In between songs, Mickey said something like what is that thing? Is it like some kind of thing for the internet? I'm kind of out of the loop on internet stuff. It's like, it's AOL, like, you know, like, what is that? Is it like a place you go on, you chat, you talk to Sherry Max and Lai Ray and Moss Moon's Pack? The glory days of AOL. But after that, you know, things were kind of not going too well, and then one thing they did was they got a new female singer. There you go. That's the current band lineup, but getting a female singer, it really helped them. I think also maybe they got a new booking agent. Maybe it was the rise in interest and just nostalgia. They were able to get better venues than these little outdoor rundown places, higher ticket sales and things like that. But whatever the case, things have been going a lot better for them. So Jeff Abrams, the bass player, Phil Bennett on keyboards, he's been there for a while. Stephanie Calvert's the new female singer. There's Mickey Thomas. This is Daryl Verduzco. Ace. And this is John Roth, the lead guitarist, formerly of the band Warrant. So they continue to this day. Let's go back and talk about one more thing. Marty Balin. He passed away in 2018, I believe. The third member of the family to die. An incredible, soulful voice. Maybe misunderstood a little bit, but definitely underappreciated in the history of rock pop. Rest in peace, Marty Balin. So many great songs. You have to go back to Jefferson Airplane to really hear kind of his best work. He could really just weave a ballad, I'm telling you. So definitely miss Marty. All right. Last thing is to talk about Craig Chaquico. So after he left Starship, Chiquizo was holding on to some songs that he had written with the intention of Mickey Thomas singing them, and for whatever reason that didn't happen. Maybe they got rejected or whatever, but he formed a kind of a hair metal band in the early 90s called Big Bad Wolf. They only have one album. This is Brett Bloomfield. I'll be damned. I didn't know he was in that, in Big Bad Wolf. And they performed a little bit, but that was pretty much it. They pretty much disbanded right after that. After that, Craig Chiquizo went on to take he got into doing like smooth jazz and like world music. Okay, Acoustic Planet was his first solo album. That's pretty much what he stuck to in his solo career. Won some, I think he even won Grammy nominations for this. Never appeared in JS with Kantner. Never was a guest even with Mickey. However, there was a really cool moment in 2017 where Chiquizo, right there on the lead guitar, got together with just a one-time show with himself, Pete Sears, right there on the keyboards, and then in the background, John Barbada. So you have three of the old JS musicians, you know, from the Earth Spitfire period. Especially awesome to see John Barbada, the original drummer for JS, back on the drums, especially after that horrific automobile accident he had suffered in 1978, forcing him to leave JS. So this was a cool moment. There's Pete Sears right there. Other than that, he's pretty much he's launched campaigns against the Starship names, both of them, especially after the death of Kantner. His claim was that there was some agreement that once Kantner was gone that they would retire the name, but it did not happen. They still perform as JS. He posts about it a lot on Facebook. In fact, there was even a lawsuit around that time where he was suing the members of JS for that. He doesn't like the fact that both these bands use those names for profit, and it's misleading because it's not original members. He calls Starship featuring Mickey Thomas a Mickey Thomas band, solo band, and kind of like Ace calling the California Dreamin' Beach Boys song the Mike Love solo project. He actually lost the lawsuit. His claim to fame is he is the only member of JS who recorded on every single song of JS and Starship on all of the albums we've talked about during these videos, 1974 to 1989. You can even stick 1990 in there if you count Don't Lose Any Sleep, which was a Starship song in 1990, which he should be proud of. That's an amazing feat. But he did lose the lawsuit. I don't know. But you know what? Even if he was completely right about that, it doesn't really matter because it's going... no matter what, he had to lose that lawsuit because the Jefferson Starship and Starship parallel universes, it doesn't matter what you do. They will never be stopped. They will continue seemingly into eternity. That's just the way it goes. So next video is going to be the rankings. It's not eternal here, but JS and Starship, it'll never end.
It's not